Jaya Jaya Jagannath Sachidanandana Divine Puricha Sharana
Prabhu, seeking the mercy of the Vaishnavas, my senior devotees gathered here, and all the devotees. I will try to speak something from my limited knowledge. Of course, no matter how much you know, it is only one drop in the ocean of Lord Chaitanya's transcendental pastimes. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, the author Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami constantly makes this point that it is not possible to get to the bottom of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes with his associates. Their relationships are like a deep ocean. You cannot understand the bottom. Today we're going to be speaking about things that Kaviraj Das Goswami says are indescribable or intolerable to describe. Either there are no words to describe these things, or the pain is so great in trying to describe these things. In one sense, what we are going to describe is certainly another miracle. Yesterday, you heard so much about the miracle of Srila Haridas Thakur. Lord Chaitanya is described to be like an expert painter, an artist who knows how to display the qualities of his devotees for the right reason at the right time. You heard yesterday so wonderfully how Haridas Thakur, although born in a Yavana family, became the Acharya of the Holy Name. Lord Chaitanya also made Sanatana Goswami, who is described as almost a Muslim. Again, almost a Muslim. Lord Chaitanya made Rupa Goswami the expert in the loving pastimes and rasas of Vrindavan. And then Ramananda Roy, externally a Grihastha and of a Sudra family, Lord Chaitanya had him speak the most confidential truths of rasa, not only to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, but also to Pradyumna Misra. Pradyumna Misra, high-class Brahmana. He went to Lord Chaitanya and said, please let me hear talks of Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya said, I don't know anything about Krishna. I recommend you go see Ramananda Roy. In this way, Lord Chaitanya demonstrated his complete independence in revealing knowledge of Krishna. And he also humbled all those who are attached to their birthright, who are attached to their material distinction as first-class brahmana, first-class sannyasi. Lord Chaitanya made the greatest miracles appear through persons whose social standing was considered to be contemptible. Yavanas, almost Yavanas by association, no high-class Brahminical standard in terms of birth. Yet Lord Chaitanya plunged all the devotees in an ocean of transcendental love because the devotees get to hear such extraordinary nectar coming through the mouths of persons who are materially considered inferior. Kaviraj Goswami's conclusion is, the Lord does this for his own personal profit. He has his own reasons. One of them, obviously, is to humiliate those who are attached to their material background, their material learning, their family prestige. Today we're going to speak of another miracle. Although my mind is still absorbed in the miracles that we heard yesterday. Haridas Thakur, coming from such a low birth. And what did Lord Chaitanya tell him? At every moment you're visiting all the places of holy pilgrimage. At every moment you're constantly studying all the Vedas. At every moment you're performing great sacrifices and austerities. Why? Because from your tongue comes the holy name of Krishna. So yesterday we were put into a extraordinary concentration of meditation on the holy name, thanks to Srila Radhanath Maharaj and Srila Sachinanda Maharaj. Today I shall try, in a very faulty way, to describe the miracle of Prema Vivarta. Apparent mistakes caused by the most intense love. Also, I shall attempt to describe fear of separation from Lord Chaitanya. These will be powerful motivating factors in trying to describe just a little of Gadadhar Pandit, his relationship with Lord Chaitanya. First, let us meditate on Sri Gaur Hari, Gaura Megha, the cloud, the rain cloud known as Lord Chaitanya. Today, in the morning at least, there were dark rain clouds in the sky. Normally, the dark rain clouds make you think of Lord Shyam Sundar. So today we want to also think of rain clouds, but these rain clouds are golden. Gaura Megha. The rain cloud of Lord Chaitanya distributes the rain of his mercy. How? By his glance. Alokanamrita, the nectar of his glance, rains down upon Gaudadesh, which is like a garden. And the devotees are like plants and creepers, a fire burning in the Bhavagni, the blazing fire of material existence. But just by the soothing nectarian glance, Alokanamrita, from the Gora Megha, from the rain cloud known as Gaur, they become revitalized. Who could tolerate separation from Lord Chaitanya? When you're a fire, ablaze, how can you tolerate separation from the extinguishing rain cloud of mercy? You can't conceive of such a thing. But there's two types of blazing fires. There's the Bhavagni and there is the Premagni. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, you get to experience both. You get to experience relief from both, and you get to taste the intensity of both. In the pastime we shall describe with Gadadhar Pandit, you will see fear of the Premagni, the blazing fire of separation. It motivated the associates of Lord Chaitanya to do extraordinary things out of this fear of impending separation. Why? Because Lord Chaitanya wanted to go to Vrindavan. He wanted to leave Jagannath Puri and go to Vrindavan. The first ones to feel this fear of impending separation were Ramananda Roy and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Lord Chaitanya presented to them, I want to go, if it's all right with you. We see the loving reciprocation between the Lord and his devotees. He's the independent Supreme Personality of Godhead, yet he's asking the devotees, please allow me to go to Vrindavan. Now, externally, Ramananda Roy and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, they agreed, but internally, they were afraid of the impending separation. So they made all kinds of excuses. Now it's Ratha Yatra. My Lord, if you kindly wait until Kartik, then it will be a good time to go to Vrindavan. Kartik came. My Lord, it's too cold. You please wait till Dol Yatra. In this way, for a few years, Ramananda Roy and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya successfully impeded Lord Chaitanya from leaving Jagannath Puri to go to Vrindavan. King Prataparudra was also aware of the impending departure of Lord Chaitanya. He had asked Ramananda Roy, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, do something to keep him here, otherwise my whole kingdom is useless if Gaurhari departs. So one impediment after another was lovingly put in the path of Lord Chaitanya. Just see how the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes under the control of his devotees. You remember from the first canto how the Lord wanted to depart Hastinapur for Dwarka, and Yudhisthira stopped him. My dear Lord, please stay just a few days longer. In Chaitanya Lila, you now hear an even more intimate situation of the devotees predominating upon the Supreme Lord. But after many months of such tricks, Lord Chaitanya told his devotees, I understand what you have been doing, but I really wish to go to Vrindavan. And on the way to Vrindavan, there are two shelters I have there. My mother Sachimata and the Ganga. I want to take shelter of them and then I'll go to Vrindavan. Please allow that. Try to understand the fear of the devotees, the impending separation. Lord Chaitanya began to depart. So many devotees were accompanying him. Only the chief devotees are described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, but the whole assembly that was accompanying Lord Chaitanya as he was leaving Jagannath Puri, Kaviraj Goswami says, all the names can't be listed. Today we will speak particularly about Gadadhar Pandit's reaction to Lord Chaitanya's departing. Gadadhar Pandit sought to accompany Lord Chaitanya, but Lord Chaitanya reminded him, how can you leave Jagannath Puri? You have two vows, very solemn, both of them. First of all, you have taken the vow of Chaitra Sannyas. You have vowed to perform Vanaprastha within Jagannath Puri and not go outside. How can you come with me? Secondly, you have a vow to serve the Gopinath deity. For that reason also, you cannot accompany me. You cannot leave your service to the deity. And what was Gadadhar Pandit's reaction? Now try to understand. Normally Gadadhar Pandit is so submissive, so fearful of in any way causing a stern reaction from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's famous for that. Yet, in this inconceivable situation of Lord Chaitanya departing Jagannath Puri, Gadadhar Pandit manifested transcendental feistiness. Very, very special situation. In fact, Kaviraj Goswami tells us it's impossible for ordinary devotees to understand this. Only the most confidential devotees can actually grasp Gadadhar Pandit's behavior as Lord Chaitanya was about to depart. So Gadadhar Pandit told Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you're talking about my Chaitra Sannyas vow? My vow to stay in Jagannath Puri? The hell with it. Wherever you are, that is Jagannath Puri. If I go with you, wherever you go, I'll be with Jagannath Puri. The hell with my Chaitra Sannyas vow. It's very extraordinarily serious. Then, what about the vow to serve Gopinath? Gadadhar Pandit had this very solemn vow to always render service to the Gopinath deity. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu pointed that out, what was Gadadhar Pandit's response? I serve Gopinath millions of times just by seeing your lotus feet. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him, look, by your thinking of breaking these vows, I'll get all the blame. Please consider. I'll be the one who's known as the guilty one, allowing you to toss these vows away. And what did Gadadhar Pandit reply? Don't worry, I will not travel with your party. We just happen to be going to the same place. I'll just happen to show up at Sachimata's house. But I'm doing my own thing. I'm on my independent course of action. You will not get the blame. I am the one who is traveling in the same direction it happens to be, but otherwise I'm just doing my own thing, and you will not get any of the blame in this way. So Gadadhar Pandit did exactly that. He began to travel alone, although it happened to be going in the same direction as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Finally, Lord Chaitanya, in so many words, said, enough of this ruse. Come, Gadadhar Pandit, join our party. Then the journey got to a point where, once again, Lord Chaitanya wanted to point out to Gadadhar Pandit what he was doing. You see, these are dealings of the topmost love. And you have to appreciate the strength of the vows Gadadhar Pandit took, as well as the strength of the love in his relationship with Lord Chaitanya. You have to keep both things in mind, and then you can see the extraordinary nature of the situation. This is the situation that Kaviraj Goswami calls the Prem Vivarta. Apparent wrongdoings because of overpowering transcendental love. Such things cannot be understood on the platform of ordinary religiosity. Such things can only be truly understood by the most confidential devotees. We're just touching the surface of this ocean that has no depth. So Lord Chaitanya was actually pleased internally by Gadadhar Pandit's reaction. But externally, he stood up for the principles of religion. He said, Gadadhar Pandit, in other words, things have gone far enough. You have thrown away your vow of service to the Gopinath deity like straw. Your desire to come with me is just a desire for sense gratification. If you at all want to make me happy, go back. If you say anything else about this, you'll bring condemnation upon me. At that point, Lord Chaitanya left Gadadhar Pandit, who collapsed unconscious on the ground. Lord Chaitanya had Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya tend to Gadadhar Pandit as he departed, as Lord Chaitanya departed. What did Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya say to Gadadhar Pandit as he tried to comfort him? He said, this is the way of Leela. In mundane life, in material existence, someone would say, that's life, that's the way it is. But here you have the closest associates of Lord Chaitanya, and what is their transcendental equivalent? This is the Leela. This is the way the Leela happens. But Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was also as grief-stricken. Lord Chaitanya went on. He still had other associates with him, including Ramananda Roy. He passed days and nights discussing Krishna with Ramananda Roy. And then he got to a point where he was going to say goodbye to Ramananda Roy. When he did that, Ramananda Roy collapsed on the ground. This time Lord Chaitanya picked up Ramananda Roy, put him on his lap, and began to cry. And again, Lord Chaitanya moved on. Kaviraj Goswami says that it is not possible to describe the feelings of separation felt by both Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy because it's intolerable. This is the fire of separation from the Lord. The transcendental pain in discussing those things is so intense for the most elevated devotees that Kaviraj Goswami says, it's intolerable, I can't write about it. But there is one mystery that I would like your help in understanding. Lord Chaitanya went ahead and he wanted to cross the river, but on the other side of the river, the territory was ruled by a drunkard Muslim governor who was very degraded. So Lord Chaitanya's party poised on the other side of the river, while one of his associates, a government official, Mahapatra, thought to come up with a plan how to appease the drunken governor on the other side. Meanwhile, that drunken governor had sent a spy to see what was going on. That spy went back to the drunken Muslim governor and reported, everywhere I see Hindus rolling on the ground, shivering in ecstasy, chanting the holy name of Krishna. They've become mad. They come from all over. Night and day they're chanting like this. And then the Muslim spy began to also chant, Krishna, Krishna, in ecstasy. The Muslim governor then sent his secretary to talk with Lord Chaitanya's party. The secretary presented the plan, but before he could present the plan, he was overwhelmed with ecstatic love in the association of Lord Chaitanya. He said, please, the Muslim governor would like to see you. He doesn't come to fight. Please grant him darshan. Lord Chaitanya agreed. But like every preacher, Lord Chaitanya had his managers around him. The Mahapatra, very shrewd, said, yes, he can come, but make sure no weapons and only 4 persons can accompany him. In this way, Lord Chaitanya is showing that along with the mercy, there's also management. It's like at this yatra we can see there's so much mercy being given, but it's also so well managed. The management stays in the background and everything happens so nicely. That's Srila Prabhupada's wish. He said, management follows preaching like a shadow. If there's no preaching, what's the point of management? But where there is preaching, the management is there like a shadow to organize everything. So the Mahapatra was doing this with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was profusely merciful. Yes, yes, he may come. And then the Mahapatra, yeah, he can come, but no weapons. Only 4 or 5 persons accompanying him. Taking care of all the practical details like that. So the secretary went back and informed the governor. And the governor then came to see Lord Chaitanya, dressed as a Hindu. From afar, just by looking at Lord Chaitanya, he became filled with ecstatic love. And then he presented himself to Lord Chaitanya in the most humble, pitiful way. Why did I take such a low birth? Why was I born in such abominable circumstances? Let me just give up my body right now. Because of my birth, I cannot properly execute religious principles. He begged for Lord Chaitanya's mercy in such a pitiful, humble way. The Mahapatra, the Orissa governmental assistant of Lord Chaitanya, couldn't believe it. This man, he's a drunkard, he's a debauch, he's completely corrupt. But look at him now, he's a complete different person. This can only be because of the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya gave the Muslim governor a glance of mercy. Alokanamrita, the nectarian glance of mercy, raining down, extinguishing the bhavagni, the burning fire of material existence. Assured that he had the consent of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Muslim governor began to chant Krishna, Krishna. And then, feeling even more assurance, he requested, please give me some service. Showing that he's indeed properly chanting Hare Krishna. He's looking, where is devotional service? So, once again, the Mahapatra intervened with the list of devotional service. Service you want? Here's something that needs to be done. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu needs to cross the river. Please arrange that he can do that in complete safety. The Muslim governor very happily arranged for Lord Chaitanya's crossing the river in safe circumstances. There were many pirates patrolling that area, but the Muslim governor had soldiers guarding Lord Chaitanya. But then it was also time for Lord Chaitanya to take leave of the Muslim governor, the ex-drunkard and debauch who had now so wonderfully arranged for Lord Chaitanya's journey across the river. He had Lord Chaitanya's personal association. But now it's time for Gaur Hari to continue onward to Navadvip. He left the Muslim governor. Now what I would like your help in understanding is that Kaviraj Goswami says, it is impossible to describe the ecstatic symptoms of love and separation felt by this Muslim governor. Now, I can understand that it's indescribable, the feelings of separation, Gadadhar Pandit, the feelings of separation of Ramananda Roy. But who is this Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that a former drunkard, corrupt, debauched Muslim governor now is feeling ecstatic symptoms of love and separation that Kaviraj Goswami says, I can't describe it. What is going on here? So you know how Lord Chaitanya actually didn't make it to Vrindavan. He met up with Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and Ram Kali. He met up with Raghunath Das and gave him advice how to situate himself at home without causing a disturbance and to wait for the right time when Krishna would indicate he could join, Raghunath Das could join the Transcendental Party of Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya saw his mother, he saw the devotees in Navadvip, and he turned back. Sanatan had told him something, that actually it's not very good to go to Vrindavan surrounded by such a huge throng of persons. Lord Chaitanya later considered that point and decided to return to Jagannath Puri and redo his attempt to go to Vrindavan with at most one person. So Lord Chaitanya returned. Naturally, all the devotees in Jagannath Puri were so happy. And as Lord Chaitanya met them all upon his return, what did he say was the reason he came back? He said, I wanted to go to Vrindavan, but because Gadadhar Pandit was unhappy, I returned. I was not able to go. Gadadhar Pandit was overwhelmed with transcendental ecstasy to hear this. And he fell at clasping Lord Chaitanya's lotus feet. He said, wherever you go, that is Vrindavan, that is the river Yamuna, that is the river Ganga. This was confirmed by Lord Chaitanya himself during Rath Yatra, when he described when he described his own consciousness. Muramana Vrindavana. My mind is Vrindavan. In my mind, the pastimes of Radha and Krishna are constantly going on. So Gadadhar Pandit was certainly right to say that wherever Lord Chaitanya goes, that is Vrindavan. It is easiest and most expedient to approach Vrindavan and Radha Krishna Leela through Lord Chaitanya and his associates. In one purport where Srila Prabhupada is describing Gadadhar Pandit's statement to Lord Chaitanya, wherever you are, that is Vrindavan, that's the river Yamuna, that's the river Ganga. Srila Prabhupada makes a very pointed statement. He writes that in Vrindavan, the devotees, the Brijbasis, are attached to Radha Krishna Leela. Normally, he said, it is very difficult. Although they're attached to Radha Krishna Leela, it is very difficult to enter within Radha Krishna Leela. But if you go through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, if you seek to enter Radha Krishna Leela through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then the path is much more clear. So Gadadhar Pandit told Lord Chaitanya, you are independent. In other words, who are we that you ask us for permission to return to Vrindavan or to go back, to make another attempt to go to Vrindavan? But if we can say something, let us say this. Now the rainy season has begun. You please stay 4 months in Jagannath Puri and then go to Vrindavan. And all the Vaishnavas agreed. Gadadhar Pandit has presented our feelings. So Lord Chaitanya accepted that. And then Gadadhar Pandit requested Lord Chaitanya, you please come to my house for lunch. Now, you're thinking, maybe, everyone was always inviting Lord Chaitanya to lunch. So many of his intimate associates, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Dvaitacharya, Raghunath Das. What is special about this lunch invitation that Gadadhar Pandit extended? Kaviraj Goswami says this. He says, it is impossible for a human being to describe Gadadhar Pandit's offering of lunch to Lord Chaitanya and Lord Chaitanya's tasting that lunch. It is impossible for a human being to describe. These are the kind of realities that we are dealing with. So in this way, please meditate on these special miracles of loving exchanges with Lord Chaitanya. There are different kinds of duties. There is dharma karma, the activities of religion, as ordinarily known. Lord Chaitanya's associates would constantly neglect dharma karma for the service of the Lord or for association with the Lord. Lord Chaitanya didn't mind that. But then there is bhakta dharma, the duties of a devotee in devotional service. Lord Chaitanya did not like when these activities were neglected, and therefore, even in spite of feeling impending separation from Gadadhar Pandit, when Lord Chaitanya left Jagannath Puri to attempt to go to Vrindavan, he still told Gadadhar Pandit, stop don't say anything more. You must retrieve your vows of Chaitra Sannyas and service to the Gopinath deity. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya explained Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's feelings. He said, Gadadhar Pandit, try to understand. This is the same thing that Krishna went through because of Bhishmadev making a promise. Krishna had promised he will not fight. Bhishmadev had promised, I'll put such pressure on to kill Arjuna that either Krishna breaks his promise or Arjuna dies. That is my own promise. So, everyone knows, of course, how Krishna discarded his own promise to uphold Bhishmadev's promise. In other words, the Lord tolerated breaking his own promise to support the promise of the devotee. Now, why did Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya bring that example up in relation to Gadadhar Pandit? What was the Lord tolerating in terms of Gadadhar Pandit? He was tolerating his own love and feelings of separation. Still, in order to preserve Gadadhar Pandit's promises, in spite of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's feelings of separation, he upheld Gadadhar Pandit's promise of Chaitra Sannyas and service to the Gopinath deity. Even Lord Chaitanya did this at the cost of his own feelings of attachment for Gadadhar Pandit. Just as Krishna, at the cost of his own promise, upheld Bhishmadev's promise. These dealings are very confidential. That is not possible to understand from the ordinary viewpoint of Dharma. These are the dealings of the highest love. Prema Vivarta. Apparent mistakes, apparent misdoings because of the flow of pure love of God. As we are gathered at this place, saturated with memories of Gadadhar Pandit, what can we do as tiny devotees of devotees of devotees of Lord Chaitanya? We can be thankful that the Lord, through his devotees, in his relationships, has shown the highest levels of loving reciprocation, the highest levels of loving ties. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has shown us how to deal with the Bhavagni, the blazing fire of material existence, and he's also presented the Premagni, the flames, the fire of pure love of God. Through Kaviraj Goswami, you can see the fear of separation felt by devotees like Ramananda Roy, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. You see the actual tidal wave, tsunami of separation hit Gadadhar Pandit, hit Ramananda Roy, and then hit a former drunkard, debauched Muslim governor. These pastimes are impossible for a mundane scholar to understand. They are impossible for someone who is simply aware of ordinary Dharma. Such a person cannot understand these things. But because we are hearing of Lord Chaitanya and his associates through disciplic succession, we get to relish one drop of the ocean of loving affairs between Lord Chaitanya and his devotees. Thank you very much.
So we want to, from the bottom of our hearts, thank Maharaj Devamrita Swami for so deeply explaining this wonderful mood of separation from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and how, in the real sense, it's undescribable even by great souls who are deep in that mood. And a beautiful, wonderful, loving relationship between Gadadhar Pandit and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Thank you, Maharaj. So this is a very, very holy place. So many wonderful and deep pastimes have gone on, especially centered around the life of Srila Gadadhar Pandit. I would also like to start by saying that I'm not at all, or even consider myself in the future to be at all qualified to speak on such, loving relationships between the Lord and His most intimate devotees. But we are duty bound to try to say something, as the instructions from the previous acharyas have given us this most wonderful opportunity in service. But we remain simply dependent on their mercy for whatever we attempt to try to describe. Yesterday, His Holiness Sachinandana Maharaj said something, or actually quoted from Padma Purana, that by absorption into the life of great souls, one gets 1% of those qualities. In other words, there is some assimilation, some absorption of those qualities that we absorb ourselves in by hearing. And so yesterday, Maharaj spoke very wonderfully with great transcendental wit and also deep realization on His Holiness, or let me see, Haridas Thakur, Mahasai Haridas Thakur, Namacharya. And one of his main qualities, of course, was tolerance. So based on that, I beg I'm sure you all have somehow or other simulated the quality of tolerance. So now you can somehow or other apply that to this lecture you're about to hear. Because otherwise I won't be able to make it through if you're not tolerant. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mentions that one should not try to imitate the great souls. Especially he mentions 4 persons, Srila Haridas Thakur for his tolerance. As we heard yesterday, how not only was he tolerant by being beaten and constantly attacked by material energy, but at the same time he always forgave those, prayed for their deliverance, and remained fixed in his loving devotion to the Supreme Lord. It's impossible to understand the tolerance of Srila Haridas Thakur. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives us a caution that we should not even, we should try to understand it, but we should never try to imitate it in any way. Because we do, we'll be destroyed. And also he mentions Srila Sanatana Goswami for his humility. How humble he was. That not wanting to pass along the gate in front of Jagannath temple and be seen by the pujaris there, and wanting to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with great longing in his heart. When Chaitanya was here, Sanatana Goswami had just come from Vrindavan and he wanted to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he crossed along the beach, the hot sandy beach in the middle of the month of Jaish, which is, I believe, the month of July, the month we are in now. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw him after he had fell at his lotus feet, he looked at his feet and he saw his feet were all full of blisters. He said, "Which way did you come?" And he said, "My dear Lord, I took the path across the beach." He said, "Why?" He explains, "I did not want to in any way contaminate the pujaris simply by them seeing me. This way they could remain in their best consciousness in order to worship Lord Jagannath, Baladev and Subhadra Maharani." And his feet was all blistered. So this humility is beyond our ability to understand. And of course, Damodar Pandit, for his high quality of Vaishnava etiquette, and applying that etiquette even in his instructions to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu loved Damodar Pandit because of his very high quality of Vaishnava etiquette. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu glorifies this quality of Vaishnava etiquette as being the jewel on the body of a devotee, where that's an ornament that stands out as the pinnacle of the qualities of a Vaishnava, how they behave. Just like we're here in a holy place, and so many pilgrims will be seeing us, and how we behave. They will take note. Oh, these devotees are so nice. They're so gentle. They give concern to others. They're so enthusiastic in their devotional practice. They will appreciate simply by our behavior and how we treat the people of Jagannath Puri. So Vaishnava etiquette is so important. In fact, we cannot practice devotional service properly without the proper etiquette. The etiquette is the basis for devotion to manifest. And Srila Ramananda Roy, of course, Devamrita Maharaj spoke about his qualities and how he was so unaffected, sober, in the face of the most attractive forms of ladies. He had to massage the Devi Dasas who were dancing for Jagannath's pleasure in the various dramas. He would massage the various parts of their bodies, and it says his mind was like stone. Not even the slightest bit of change in his consciousness when he was engaged in his service. He simply saw this as his eternal relationship in the spiritual world, because Ramananda Roy is none other than Vishaka. And he was seeing these Devi Dasas as gopis who were serving Jagannath, and he was simply assisting them in their transcendental service of giving pleasure to Lord Jagannath. So Lord Chaitanya cautions we should not try in any way to imitate these four. And of course Gadadhar Pandit. His loving mood for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And who is Gadadhar Pandit? He's a very interesting personality. He's actually Srimati Radharani. In the Gauragona Deshtapika, which is written in Chaitanya Charitamrita in one purport, in Adi Lila, it's explained that he is Srimati Radharani, but he also is a combination of Srimati Radharani along with Lalita. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada describes him as being Shyamasundar Vallabha. And that same Shyamasundar Vallabha, or Vrindavaneshwari, which is Srimati Radharani, has again descended in this particular Lila to give pleasure to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Sri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nayanya. Radha and Krishna have become one in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but Srimati Radharani has also come again in this form of Gadadhar Pandit. But the mood of Gadadhar Pandit, as described by Devamrita Maharaj, is so special and so interesting, because we know Srimati Radharani's mood is that she gets angry at Krishna sometimes. She takes exceptions to his activities. And therefore there's this this anger of love that manifests in that particular exchange of loving relationships. But in Gadadhar Pandit, it's described he was like Rukmini. when Krishna tried so many ways to disturb the mind of Rukmini just to get her angry at him, when he spoke to her on how she had made a mistake, she should have took up Shishupal as her husband. Somehow she chose him, and therefore it was a big mistake. I said, I have no background, no one knows my occupation, you could have had Shishupal, he's so many good qualities. He was a Kshatriya, came from a one family, so many things. And Rukmini, and try to inspire her anger, in love, of course, not just anger, but in anger and love, she acted the opposite. She just fainted in ecstasy out of devastation. She was devastated by by Lord Krishna's words. And then Krishna realized, well, maybe I said the wrong thing. And then he, out of his loving way, he picked her up and again embraced her and somewhat apologized. But at the same time, Rukmini spoke so sweetly on how she could never even consider any other man except Lord Shri Krishna. And so this mood of Rukmini very much manifested in the life of Gadadhar Pandit. We have the story of Vallabha Bhatt. Who was Vallabha Bhatt? Actually, he was a great scholar and a great devotee. Lord Chaitanya appreciated Vallabhacharya. Of course, we know now he started the Sampradaya, the Pushti Marg. They worship Radha and Krishna. They're very prominent in the area of Vrindavan. Sumati Mararji, the very distinguished, aristocratic business lady who gave passage to Srila Prabhupada to come to America on her steamliner, the Jaladuta. She was a follower of Vallabha Bhatt and Pushti Marg. And he was there. He came at the time of Lord Chaitanya. But one problem he had, he was proud. And Lord Chaitanya, as we heard from Devamrita Maharaj, how Lord Chaitanya always tried to somehow or other destroy whatever was not conducive to devotional service, and then at the same time bring out the good qualities of that person. Not just to destroy their apparent anarthas, but at the same time to highlight their wonderful qualities and use them to spread Krishna consciousness. So Vallabha Bhatt came to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu so many times just to show his intelligence. You know, sometimes we have some knowledge, we have some intelligence, we have some experience, and we forget where it comes from. We forget that it actually, as Krishna says, Rasaham apsakuntiya pabaspi sasisurya pranava sarvavedeshu sabdake purusham nishu. Purusha sabdake purusham nishu means Krishna saying in Bhagavad Gita that I am the ability, and all living beings, whatever abilities we have, is coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is simply by His mercy. But Vallabha Bhatt had so many good qualities. And sometimes when you have a lot of good qualities, it's easy. Not only easy, it's practically natural to become proud. If you do something successful, wonderful, noteworthy, praiseworthy, somehow this element of pride starts to manifest. And sometimes it's undetectable. And Vallabha Bhatt wanted to show Lord Chaitanya in so many ways his knowledge. And then he also did it in a challenging way too. One time he came to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he says, why do you chant the names of Krishna? We are all like the wife of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And at the same time, the wife should always refer to her husband as Prabhu. I told this to one girl about a couple of weeks ago. She was talking. She asked me, what should I call my husband? Because he just received his new name. He just got initiation. I said, what should I call my husband? Because it was a long name. She wanted an abbreviated version of the name. You know, sometimes it's too much to say the whole name. So I said, you should call him Prabhu. She said, what? I said, that is according to culture, that is according to etiquette, and that is according to chastity. That you use the word Prabhu to refer to your husband. She said, oh, really? She was quite bewildered, but she said, she's a nice, very nice devotee. And she accepted, but sometimes we forget that. So Bhagavad was using this particular aspect of an argument against Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's glorification of the Lord by chanting his holy name. Why are you chanting the Lord's holy name out loud? We are like the wife of the holy name. You cannot speak the name. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, yes, but if the husband says, speak my name, then the wife must obey. She must somehow, that is a higher principle. So that is the ultimate principle, that one should obey superiors in every situation. That supersedes what we say the standard. Arjuna didn't want to fight. Krishna told him, you fight. That was the Dharma. So, of course, he also came to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he said, I have compiled a complete list of all of the names of the Lord. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I only know 2 names, Yasoda Nandana and Shamsundar. That's all I know. That's all I know. So again he was defeated. Finally, he came up again. He kept coming back, and then he would try to do the same thing with the devotees. And he would try to speak to them, but all the devotees were fearful because they knew Lord Chaitanya was somehow or other ignoring him or not giving him accommodations to speak. So they would, very strict. So again he came, this time he said, he was very respectful and very, very humble towards Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but he had this arrogance, he had this pride about his ability to understand and ability to philosophize. He said, my dear Lord, I have compiled a commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam that supersedes the commentary of Sridhar Swami. When Lord Chaitanya heard that, he said, one who does not follow the Swami is a prostitute. Because another meaning of the word Swami means husband. So the wife must follow the husband, otherwise she becomes a prostitute. So he called, not so indirectly, but actually quite directly, he called him a prostitute. So he couldn't get anywhere with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He kept trying and trying and trying. Finally, he went to Gadadhar. Gadadhar Pandit was so simple, so humble, so gentle. One time in an earlier Leela, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was going into ecstasy, this is right after he had taken initiation from Ishwara Puri. Sachi Mata was there. Sachi Mata was going through so many difficulties, trying to understand what was happening to her son. After he came back from Gaya, getting initiated with Ishwara Puri, he was exhibiting the ecstasy of a devotee in loving relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Sachi Mata, she couldn't understand. Finally she called some Kavirajas. What's wrong with my son? Oh, he has a disease. The airs in his body are distorted. It's a rare disease. So if you just give him some Shiva ghee, massage it on his head. She did that. bathe him in herbal oils. She tried everything. And Lord Chaitanya was very submissive to his mother's loving, caring, and very concerned attitude towards his. Never said anything. But one time, when he was in ecstasy, and he was experiencing separation from the Lord, he was just crying out, "Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna?" And Gadadhar Pandit said, "My dear Lord, Krishna is in your heart." So he, just like Hanuman, when Hanuman heard that Sita and Ram was in his heart, experiencing the separation from his worshipful Lord, he took his nails. In the same way, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu grabbed his chest and was about to rip open his chest to see Krishna in his heart. Gadadhar Pandit, with great efforts, because Lord Chaitanya was very strong, very powerful, with great efforts, he somehow grabbed the hands of Lord Chaitanya. He said, "My dear Lord, please be patient, be patient. Krishna's coming, Krishna's coming, Krishna's coming." Somehow Lord Chaitanya became pacified. And Sachi Mata was so happy. She said, "Gadadhar, you always remain with my son. You're the only one who can control him. No one else can control him." So this was Gadadhar Pandit. And we heard how when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, after he returned, after trying to go to Vrindavan, after coming to Ramakeli, coming back, Kanainata Shal, he said, "Krishna wouldn't let me go to Vrindavan because of Gadadhar. I hurt the heart. I made Gadadhar Pandit very sad." How much loving relationship was between Gadadhar Pandit and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Another wonderful story, there's so many wonderful stories. His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj will also speak. But I'll just speak one or two more stories, because to speak about Srila Gadadhar Pandit in this particular place is very, very special. Because many of his wonderful pastimes, worshipping the Gopinath Didi, are here. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left the planet, it's mentioned that during a kirtan, the devotees were having ecstatic kirtan in the temple of Tota Gopinath. The kirtan was going on, and all the devotees were in ecstasy. Everyone was chanting and dancing, and Lord Chaitanya was there. At one point during the kirtan, Lord Chaitanya left and went into the deity room. The kirtan was continuing. And it's explained that the devotees all of a sudden, after a few more minutes of the kirtan, started to feel something very sad within their life, within their mind, within their heart. Something sad. And then they looked around and they didn't see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then they went looking throughout the temple, and he could be found nowhere. It's explained by the acharyas that he actually left this material world, wound up his particular pastimes in that particular lila by entering into the body of Tota Gopinath. So this deity, in one sense, not in one sense, in the real sense, is none different than Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it was the deity that was worshipped with great devotion by Gadadhar Pandit. But at that time, the deity was standing up. Now he's sitting down. Gadadhar Pandit continued in great agony and great misery, continuing his service to Gopinath after Lord Chaitanya left. It is explained that each day Gadadhar Pandit, in his separation and his agony of separation from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was aging 1 year every day. And this is brought out by, at one time during the dressing, he was dressing Gopinath, and he was trying to put the crown. He would do this every day, put the crown on Gopinath. The deity is tall, so he had to reach up. But the crown was somehow or other, it became too heavy, and it was difficult, and he couldn't put it on the deity. And at one point, Gopinath, out of his love for Gadadhar Pandit, sat down. Tota Gopinath ki jai. Amazing. This was the love of Gadadhar Pandit. He stayed for 11 months after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left, and he only stayed for one reason. And that's mentioned, I believe, in Chaitanya Bhagavat. Srinivasacharya, the great Srinivasacharya, was given mercy by Vishnupriya and Sachimata and their blessings to go to Gadadhar Pandit and learn Srimad Bhagavatam. And Gadadhar Pandit had heard that Srinivasacharya was coming to hear Bhagavatam from him and learn Bhagavatam. But every day he would read his Bhagavatam in separation, that it became illegible, unreadable. His tears were simply wiping away the words of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And when Srinivasacharya came, he said, I am only here because I wanted to teach you this. Otherwise, I could not bear being in this world without Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so, not being able to read, he gave the Bhagavatam to Srinivas. He said, you take it back to Navadip Dham, to the scribes, and have them recopy it and bring it back. And he did. And of course, that's a long distance, having to travel all the way from Navadvip. No, it's not so long by today's transportation, but in those days it took, it mentions it took when, what was it? Shivananda Sen would travel with the devotees from Navadvip Dham to Puri. It would take at least 1 month. It would take them at least 1 month by travel. So during that time, when Srinivasacharya had gone to have the Srimad Bhagavatam recopied, Gadadhar Pandit left the planet, not able to bear the separation from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this mood of separation that we hear so much in the lives of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the mood of this ISKCON society. Srila Prabhupada has taught that because this is the basis. Our movement is based simply on the teachings and the moods given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And how is that mood played out in our day-to-day life? How do we understand that mood in our day-to-day activities in devotional service? That mood is understood, and it's explained that we should always be longing through our service for the association of the Lord. We should be performing our service in that mood, that we want to serve so nicely that in that service the Lord will somehow or other appear to us. Not that I have Krishna, I know Krishna, I'm Krishna conscious, I'm okay. No, a devotee is always in the mood that I'm in the most unfortunate situation. I'm in this material world, I've been given the mercy, and what is that mercy? To engage in devotional service, to chant the holy names of the Lord, to engage in serving the Vaishnavas, to preach to the fallen conditioned souls. There's a type of eagerness that is meant to be adopted in that mood of devotional service, which is that eagerness to somehow meet Krishna by pleasing Krishna through devotional service. And then when Krishna is pleased, Krishna appears to us in so many different ways. Through his mercy, through his devotees, in so many different ways. So we're always eager for service. We're always eager to increase the quality of our service, and of course, if we can, increase the quantity and quality of our service. Not on a material level, but on a devotional level. I was very much inspired by His Holiness Sachinandana Maharaj as he was explaining yesterday how important it is not just to chant the holy name, but to chant the holy names and at the same time bring the consciousness and remembrance of Krishna through that chanting. Not that we simply do our service just to get it done. 16 rounds, I finished 16 rounds, now what do I do? Prabhupada, Shruti Kirti tells this story, how he was with Prabhupada one time. He was sitting in his room alone. Prabhupada was chanting japa. And he was chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And he was coming to the very last beat on the 16th round. And Prabhupada very deftly and very, with great, vision for everyone to see, he'd bring the last beat down. He said, 16 rounds. Now I can do any damn thing I want. He said, they think like this. Of course, you're not like that. But if you know someone, explain that this is the importance of chanting the holy names, that it is a meditation, it is an act of devotion, it is the way to meet Krishna through the holy name. And we should always remember that, because we can get very mechanical in our devotional service. And if we become mechanical, we cannot taste the nectar that is there. Okay, thank you very much for your tolerance and your patience. Shri Gadadhar Pandit ki, Shri Tota Gopinath Mandir ki, Hitai Gopremanandi Hari Hari. Jaya Jaya Jagannatha Satchidanandana Divine Koroksha Sharana
offer our sincerest gratitude to our Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, for giving us entrance into these extraordinary holy places. Tota Gopinath is an ancient deity. Some very erudite Gaudiya Vaishnava scholars have searched out the origin of Tota Gopinath. Their conclusion is that when Krishna revealed the spiritual world to Lord Brahma, this deity was manifest. Brahmaji, in the presence of Tota Gopinath, composed Sri Brahma Samhita, which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu later founded the Adi Keshav temple in South India. When Gadadhar Pandit came to Jagannath Puri, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally arranged for him to take the responsibility of serving Tota Gopinath. Tota means garden, because Gopinath is living in this beautiful garden that we are sitting in today. He performs his pastimes since time immemorial in this garden. He has been given the name Tota Gopinath. Gadadhar Pandit is described in Sri Gaura Ganodashtapika that same personality who is Krishna's eternal loving consort, Sri Vrindavan Eshwari, has incarnated in Gauranga's Leela as Gadadhar Pandit. He is Srimati Radharani. From the time of their early youth, Lord Chaitanya and Gadadhar Pandit were inseparable friends. Very opposite in many ways. Lord Gauranga Mahaprabhu as Nimai was very naughty. In fact, when he was Nimai Pandit, he sometimes performed the leela of appearing quite proud to others by defeating all opposition in philosophy and logic. Whereas Gadadhar Pandit was perfectly well behaved, always respectful to others, gentle and humble. Gadadhar Pandit, being the son of Madhava Mishra and Ratnavati, was always a dear devotee of Krishna. From his birth, he was constantly absorbed in remembering Krishna. His Holiness Chandramauli Maharaj told that story, where Lord Chaitanya was asking, "Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? I saw him in Kanai Natashala, but then he disappeared. Where is Krishna?" Gadadhar Pandit was feeling so much deep concern for the Lord's heart. He said, "My Lord, please do not cry. Krishna is in your heart." Immediately Gauranga began to rip open his chest. Gadadhar Pandit stopped him. "Krishna's just coming. Please be patient." At that time, Lord Chaitanya, he expressed to Gadadhar that throughout my life, I have wasted my time in the vain pursuit of mundane knowledge. But you, Gadadhar, from your childhood, you have always been the most devoted servant of Lord Krishna. Lord Chaitanya, in his humility, would not give up the association of Gadadhar Pandit. And Gadadhar Pandit could not give up the association of Lord Chaitanya. In his home was the worship of Shalagram Shila. Lord Chaitanya would pick up the Shila to do the puja, and in the mood of Sri Radharani touching the body of Lord Krishna, he became so ecstatic that torrents of tears poured from his eyes, soaking his clothes and his entire body. He would put down the Shila, take bath, come back into the puja room, pick up Shila. Again, the torrents of tears poured out as he was wailing in love for Krishna. Again and again and again, he attempted to worship Shalagram, but he couldn't even see. Finally, he entrusted the Shalagram Shila to Gadadhar Pandit. "You come here every day. I am not qualified to worship them." Yes, Gadadhar Pandit was serving as the pujari of Lord Chaitanya's own personal deities at home. And it was Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who proclaimed to the devotees that I had a dream. Very soon, a great Vaishnava personality is coming to Navadvip. He started crying out, Pundarik, Pundarik. Pundarik Vidyanidhi came from Chattogram in East Bengal. And Mukunda Dutt is from that same village. He knew the glories of Pundarik Vidyanidhi. So he said to Gadadhar Pandit, I know that you love to associate with great Vaishnavas. Please come and I will bring you. Mukunda introduced Pundarik Vidyanidhi to Gadadhar Pandit. This is the son of Madhava Mishra. His whole life he has been a very humble devotee of Krishna. This Gadadhar, he has never endeavored for sense gratification in all of his life. Pundarik Vidyanidhi was so pleased to see him. Gadadhar Pandit was the personification of renunciation. He had no inclination toward material possessions. He had absolutely no inclination toward sense gratification. He only wanted to serve the Lord and his devotees. And here was Pundarik Vidyanidhi sitting next to him on a magnificent bedstead covered with silk and embroidery. He was wearing luxurious garments. His hair was long and perfectly combed with scented oils. He was wearing jewelry of gold and jewels. Two servants were continuously fanning him with chamara whisks. He was chewing spices and looking at himself in the mirror and smiling. Gadadhar Pandit, who was such a simple, humble brahmachari, was wondering in his mind, why has Mukunda brought me to this apparent materialistic person? Now Mukunda Dutt understood Gadadhar Pandit's heart. He wanted to reveal the glories of Pundarik Vidyanidhi. So he chanted a wonderful sloka, a prayer of Uddhava from the Srimad Bhagavatam, glorifying Krishna, the killer of Bakasura. How he was approached by Putana, a demoness Rakshashi who came to murder him. And Krishna, so loving and kind, gave her the position of his own mother's nurse in Sri Vrindavan Dham, the spiritual world. Who is more merciful than Krishna? Who else could be my Lord than Krishna? When Pundarik Vidyanidhi heard that, he became so much ecstatic. Tears poured from his eyes, his hair stood on end. He rolled uncontrollably. He ripped his clothes apart. The water vessels and the containers for spices and all these silken pillows were flying in all directions. 10 men tried to hold him down, but it was impossible. Finally, his ecstatic love came to such a crescendo that he entered into a state of total unconsciousness. Many hours went by till he finally opened his eyes. Gadadhar Pandit thanked Mukunda Dutt that you saved me from a great offense. I was considering this great Vaishnava to be an ordinary materialistic person. but now I wish to accept him as my spiritual master. Pundarikya Vidyanidhi, when he was approached in this way, he exclaimed, only after many, many births can one gain a disciple like Gadadhar Pandit. With the permission and blessings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, on an auspicious day, Gadadhar was initiated. Gadadhar was one of the first persons that Lord Chaitanya expressed his conviction to take sannyas. In fact, Gadadhar Pandit went to Katwa with Lord Chaitanya and helped to perform the sannyas ceremony and came to Sri Jagannath Puri. Here at the Tota Gopinath temple, Gadadhar Pandit absorbed himself in the recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam. Vrindavan Das Thakur tells that there were three special personalities of Lord Chaitanya's most intimate associates who worshiped the Lord in their own particular way. Swarup Damodar Goswami, he worshipped the Lord by constantly being immersed in the Sankirtan of the holy name. What was the power of his Sankirtan? One beautiful example which we love to cite is given, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was dancing through the streets of Puri as Swarup Damodar Goswami was chanting. Lord Chaitanya, he didn't know whether he was in the day or the night, whether he was going north, south, east, or west. He was completely oblivious to the material world. This was the power of Swarup Damodar Goswami's chanting of the holy names. More than anyone else, his chanting totally awakened Lord Chaitanya's ecstatic love. In fact, in Gambhira, when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was tasting the ecstasies of Radharani's love, Ramananda Rai was his constant associate, citing different scriptures, just according to Lord Chaitanya's inner feelings. And Swarup Damodar Goswami would sing Sankirtan, knowing exactly what to sing in perfect harmony with the Lord's particular emotions of love. On this particular day, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so oblivious, was dancing in such a way that when he came to a deep, dark, dry well, he jumped in. That well had not been used for generations. The devotees of Puri understood. It went way, way, way down, and there was not even a drop of water in it. The devotees were weeping and crying, "What has happened to our Lord?" They ran to the well in tremendous anxiety, what condition they would find the Lord. When they looked down, they saw that the entire well was filled to the top with fresh, soft butter. Lord Chaitanya was laying in it, unconscious. Swarup Damodar Maharaj constantly immersed in Nam Sankirtan. And then there was Paramananda Puri. His immersion was in meditation. In Krishna's Leela, he was Uddhava. Paramananda Puri, disciple of Sri Madhavendra Puri, was honored and worshipped by Lord Chaitanya here in Puri. In fact, Paramananda Puri 24 hours a day was meditating on the holy names, the qualities, the attributes, and the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. He was the personification of smaranam, total remembrance. And then there is Gadadhar Pandit. His absorption was in hearing and chanting the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. Vedavyas compiled the vast treasure of Vedic literatures, but was not satisfied until his guru Narada Muni instructed him to write Srimad Bhagavatam, the Paramhamsa Samhita. Our acharyas explain Shri is a name for Srimati Radharani. Srimad Bhagavatam is the literature amongst all Vedas which perfectly extols the supreme glory of Srimati Radharani without even directly saying her name once. Gadadhar Pandit, Vrindavaneshwari herself, resided here, Tota Gopinath, immersed in every sloka of Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he had a daily routine. He would rise in the morning early and bathe in the sea, then spend several hours standing before Jagannath behind the Garuda Stamba. From there he would go to Haridas Thakur Siddhabakula and spend 2 or 3 hours discussing Krishna with him. Then he would take his noon bath in sea and have prasad. And every day in the afternoon he would come to Tota Gopinath, to this very garden that we are sitting. And here he would spend 2 or 3 hours discussing Srimad Bhagavatam with Gadadhar Pandit. Primarily, he would absorb himself in hearing Gadadhar Pandit sing the sweet slokas of Srimad Bhagavatam and explain his realizations. As Chandramauli Maharaj explained, when Lord Chaitanya and Gadadhar Pandit would discuss Srimad Bhagavatam together, as they would read the verses, torrents of tears would pour from both of their eyes, and the confluence of the tears of Gauranga and Gadadhar flooded the ink of the Bhagavatam and made it practically impossible to read. In this sense, we understand in a deeper way the great contribution that Srila Prabhupada offered to the world. It was what he called his life's work, to translate and give commentaries perfectly according to the great acharyas of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada and our beloved acharyas consider it the most important of all scriptures. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, if there is a dissolution in this world, and all the books of all the libraries in the entire world were destroyed, but Srimad Bhagavatam remained, there would be no loss. Because everything is in Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada, to prepare for his journey to the Western world, lived in those simple rooms of Radha Damodar temple. His constant meditation. We're compiling those purports for the first canto. He spent years, day and night, absorbed to give us Srimad Bhagavatam. One saintly person told me he was hosting Srila Prabhupada at his ashram once. Srila Prabhupada was so deeply immersed in Bhagavatam, day and night and all day. They would just put his prasad at the door outside and knock, and sometimes hours would go by before Prabhupada would even take it. Srila Prabhupada was not only absorbed in reading Srimad Bhagavatam, but he was deeply absorbed in that spirit of compassion, of presenting it in such a way that the whole world could receive it. When he completed the first canto in 3 volumes, he considered, now I am prepared to travel to the West on my Guru Maharaj's order. As soon as he finished the first canto, he considered, now I am prepared for the journey. That he prepared his whole life. As far as his personal possessions, he only had a little bag with some cereal, a change of clothes, his japa beads, and an umbrella. But on the ship, he had huge crates, wooden crates of Srimad Bhagavatams. Recently we had this wonderful festival in Butler, Pennsylvania. Did all of you hear about that? When Srila Prabhupada came off Jaladuta, he told Brahmananda Maharaj that I walked off the plank of the cargo ship and started walking. There was nobody there for him. He said, I did not know whether I should walk forward or go to the right or go to the left. He's at the dockyards in New York City. Strange foreign land. But Prabhupada said I was perfectly confident because I knew I had my Srimad Bhagavatams. And wherever he went, he was trying to induce people to take these Srimad Bhagavatams. He sold copy to Captain Pandya, yes, on the ship. Somebody from Traveler's Aid was sent to bring him to Butler, Pennsylvania, where his hosts were waiting for him. Prabhupada spent over 1 month there in 1965, the first place that he preached in America. Srila Prabhupada explained that when he was in Vrindavan, he would sometimes go to Agra to meet one of his friends, whose name was Mathura Prasad Agarwal. And one day, Mr. Agarwal was revealing his mind to Srila Prabhupada, that my son is lost. He went to America to get a materialistic education as an engineer. Now this is very different. Most parents that I know are longing for their children to get accepted by a college in America to become an engineer. But he was saying he was lost. And while he was there, he was trapped by an American woman and married her. Srila Prabhupada, he was always meditating on the mission of his Guru Maharaj. When Prabhupada heard that, he said, "Oh, your son married an American lady? Maybe they can send an invitation so I can go to the West to preach. That is my Guru Maharaj's order." Mathura Prasad Agarwal did not say a word in reply. And there was never a discussion on the subject ever again. But some months later, Srila Prabhupada gets a message that an invitation has come for you from the American embassy that you can go to America. Signed by Sally Agarwal. So Prabhupada had his way. And with Sumati Morarji's kindness, he took Jaladuta. And here he was in Butler, Pennsylvania. So we had a festival just last month. And the special guests were Sally Agarwal and her husband Gopal. They don't live in Butler, Pennsylvania anymore. They moved to Ohio, a different state. But they came on the invitation of the devotees and spoke. She spoke many incredible things. Please listen to that tape recording when you have time. Even if you don't have time, make time. It's very sweet. Because Sally Agarwal was a Christian lady, and she never converted, but she just loved Prabhupada so much. At the beginning, she didn't know what to do with him. She spoke in her little talk that Gopal's father had been regularly sending names and biodata of people for them to invite to America. Because in India, so many people want to go to America in those days. Out of dozens of invitations that they sent, nobody ever came. And they knew that this was just his father's fantasy. Nobody will ever come. But she explained that one day a letter came from Srila Prabhupada. He wrote the letter just as he was boarding the Jaladuta and sent it from Calcutta. Now in those days, mail took about a month from India to America. So when she got the letter, Prabhupada was arriving in New York at the same time. She was shocked with fear and apprehension. She called her husband Gopal, who was at work, and said, "Gopal, Gopal, I can't believe it. He's coming, he's coming. He's actually coming. And you should see what he looks like." Have you ever seen that pamphlet Prabhupada he printed in India? It was something like the message for world peace. And there's a photo of Srila Prabhupada on the front cover. He looks very grave. Shaved head, no shirt, just a sannyasi cloth around his shoulder, and he looks really serious. He said, "I'm sending you this so that when I walk off the boat, you will know who I am. She said, you should see what he looks like. He's coming. He's coming. So they couldn't go to New York. It's a long way. So they hired someone from Traveler's Aid to put him in a bus and ship him to Butler, Pennsylvania. And Gopal arrived early in the morning. I think something 2, 3 in the morning. His Prabhupada's bus came to the Pittsburgh bus station. And he drove him to Butler. And, they were a husband and wife with two little tiny children. What to do with this Swamiji? They had no time to make any preparations. So he slept on the couch in the living room, and they were in their bedrooms. And they didn't know anything about the etiquette of a sannyasi. They were both eating meat, cooking meat, having meat in the refrigerator. And they didn't know what they were supposed to do, what they weren't not supposed to do. But Srila Prabhupada, Sally Agarwal explained, was so kind. They would say, one day she said, we're sorry, but we eat meat, we're conditioned to this. Prabhupada said, no, that's all right. You just do whatever you do. The kind of music they would sometimes play, Prabhupada would say, no, it's all right. You just do whatever you do. He was so patient, so tolerant, so forgiving. She said, not for 1 second did Prabhupada ever make them feel that he was inconveniencing them, or that he was inconvenienced by them. So gracious. They fell in love with him. And the culture shock. One day she was vacuuming her rug, and Prabhupada was amazed, studying the vacuum cleaner. They spoke long time about the science of vacuum cleaners. Prabhupada never saw anything like this. You just press a button and all the dirt in the floor is sucked in. Prabhupada was studying American life, American psychology. And he was very eager to preach. So every night they had like a festival. They would invite different friends from Pittsburgh, and they would invite different groups to come to their house just to have the Swami speak. But he was so strange looking. Butler, Pennsylvania is a small conservative town in the Appalachian Mountains. When they saw Prabhupada, the way he dressed, the way he was, they were afraid he would totally shock the whole city. They were afraid they were going to get in trouble. So that's why she called all the newspapers to have an article about him so that people would be prepared when they saw him. And then some weeks later, the shipment by truck came to Sally Agarwal's house with the books. Now they just had a small apartment and these big boxes of books. Srimad Bhagavatams came. And somehow or other, they stored them. It took up a major part of their house. But then after Srila Prabhupada moved to New York City, actually it's very interesting. Before he moved to New York City, he went to speak at Slippery Rock State College, Professor Larson, and convinced Professor Larson to buy a set of the books and to put a set of books in the library, Srimad Bhagavatam. And because Prabhupada was bathing 3 times a day, they were wondering, when he goes to New York, how is he going to do this? So Gopal Agarwal put some coins in a bag and gave it to Srila Prabhupada, because in the bus stations, by putting some coins in a machine, you can take showers. When he arrived in New York City, Sally Agarwal and Gopal decided to move to another place. And in their new house, there was no space for the books. So Sally Agarwal, who was Prabhupada's sponsor to be in America, because Gopal wasn't a citizen at the time, she wrote to Prabhupada and said, please take these books. We have nowhere to keep them. And ultimately, with great effort, Srila Prabhupada found a place in New York City to store his big crates of Srimad Bhagavatams. So it was not easy for Srila Prabhupada to be traveling around with no home, nothing, with these giant crates of Bhagavatams. But this was Srila Prabhupada's faith. Srila Prabhupada told that everything that there is to be known for a devotee to become perfectly self-realized and go back to Godhead is contained within the first 3 volumes of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada had total faith, even if he didn't live to translate another word. In this first canto, with the purports, Srila Prabhupada said, I have put everything that is required. Yasya Devi Parabhaktir. The way to actually understand the Vedic literatures is not by academic study, not by memorization of verses or pastimes. But the real essence of the Vedas are revealed for one who has implicit faith in the words of the spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada told us this. Everything is within the translations and commentaries of the first canto. And this is how the Hare Krishna movement exploded in the Western world. The devotees had no other literature than that. Young, inexperienced boys and girls, Prabhupada called them, sometimes in their teens or early 20s, who never even heard about Krishna 6 months before, were going to American and European cities and starting centers, performing Nam-Sankirtan in the streets, and recruiting more people to surrender their lives to Krishna than are being made in the Western world even today. It was an explosion. Hundreds and hundreds of people were giving their lives to following Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan mission, and these devotees were brand new. At the most, they were 1 or 2 years following Krishna consciousness. And the only book they had was the first canto. Yes. Srila Prabhupada has given us everything in that first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And shortly after that, as he was translating beyond, he gave us Krishna book, a summary study of 10th canto. So it is not that we have to be so curious and fascinated by many, many higher subjects. That is all right, but that is not what is going to transport us to the spiritual world. What is going to transport us to the spiritual world is Krishna's grace. Krishna's mercy comes yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado, when we please our spiritual master, when we have implicit faith in the words of our spiritual master. For those who are coming in the line of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, our way of going to the spiritual world is not just fantastic learning or fantastic speaking. Our way to the spiritual world is to have implicit faith in what He has given us. Everything else is an expansion of that. But the core of the essence of our spiritual lives is faith in the words of Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master. And specifically in his commentaries of the Srimad Bhagavatam. What is the origin of that? We find it right here at Tota Gopinath Temple. Gadadhar Pandit, who is Srimati Radharani, day and night absorbed in reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna, who has stolen the love of Gadadhar Pandit so he could taste it personally. Krishna, in the mood of Srimati Radharani, tasting the sweetness of her love. Together they sat in this garden for 2 to 3 hours minimum every single day, absorbed in Srimad Bhagavatam. And how Lord Chaitanya tasted this nectar. Sometimes we're always looking for something new. But if we actually have devotion, everything is ever new. If we're dissatisfied with what we already have and we're looking for something new, that is a sign to you that you are a neophyte devotee who is not tasting the substance of bhakti. Because if we're tasting Krishna consciousness, then every time we read a verse of the Acharyas, every time we read a passage of Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam or Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is new, it is fresh. It is never, as Prabhupada said, hackneyed or old. Gadadhar Pandit and Lord Chaitanya, when they would sit here, how they relished. It is an example for all of us. Gadadhar Pandit would recite the story of Dhruva Maharaj from the 4th canto. And Lord Chaitanya would say, after the entire story, many chapters, Lord Chaitanya would say, say it again. Lord Chaitanya would not allow Gadadhar Pandit to proceed beyond the 4th canto of Dhruva's story until Gadadhar Pandit recited that story 100 times. Hare Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat says when he recited the story of Prahlad Maharaj, which in Prabhupada's translations and purports, it's an entire volume. He would recite it, they would discuss it, and when it would finally conclude, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, speak it again. 100 times before they continued on. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Radha and Krishna, who has come to give the highest love of the gopis in the spiritual world to even the most fallen people in this world, took the role of his own devotee to teach us how we are supposed to make spiritual progress. And this is the way. Yes, we must absorb ourselves in the holy name. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also taught us to absorb ourselves in Srimad Bhagavatam in this way. Do not take a single word as something ordinary. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he told that if you can understand clearly even one word of the Srimad Bhagavatam, you will become a pure devotee and go back home, back to Godhead. That is the power of this scripture. It is the special scripture which reveals the supreme glories of Srimati Radharani and the gopis' love for Krishna. And every verse is saturated with that mercy. For all of our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, the temple of Tota Gopinath especially represents to our hearts the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam as revealed by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his loving relation with Gadadhar Pandit. We are sitting in one of the most intimate, loving meeting places of the Lord and his devotees. Chandramauli Swami Maharaj described Srinivasacharya coming here specifically to learn Srimad Bhagavatam from Gadadhar Pandit. A little elaboration on that is Srinivas, his whole life he wanted to meet Lord Chaitanya. Finally, he grew up enough to travel all the way from Jajigram area in Bengal to Puri. It's a long distance. His only aspiration in life was to meet Lord Chaitanya and surrender to his lotus feet. But right when he came to the outskirts of Jagannath Puri, he saw some pilgrims coming out weeping. And they were speaking amongst each other that Lord Chaitanya had disappeared from the world. Srinivasacharya fell to the ground unconscious. He started pulling his hair out, weeping tears. Everything he lived for, everything he aspired for, was gone. He committed himself to enter into fire. There was absolutely no reason for him to go on breathing. But then by the Lord's mercy, he again fell unconscious. Lord Chaitanya appeared to him in a dream and told him, go to the Tota Gopinath temple and study Srimad Bhagavatam from Gadadhar Pandit. When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu disappeared from this world, he was seen by devotees in 3 different places simultaneously. He was seen entering into the ocean. He was also observed entering into the body of Lord Jagannath, and also, as Chandramauli Swami Maharaj explained, he merged into the form of Tota Gopinath. In this very, very sacred place, let us pray. Pray for that love that the Panchatantra came to distribute to the world. When Krishna appeared in the Dwapar Yuga, the ecstatic sweetness of the love of Vrindavan was revealed. But it was kept sealed and only accessible to the highest, purest Paramhamsas. But the Panchatattva, who is Radha and Krishna with their most loving associates, they have come to break the seal of the treasure house of ecstatic love of God in the mood of gopis, to break open that chest and distribute the contents profusely to the whole world without considering who is fit or who is unfit. And the vehicle in which the Panchatattva distributed the love of Vrindavan is through Harinam Sankirtan, the congregational chanting of the holy name. Sri Gadadhar Pandit also left this world by entering into the Murti of Tota Gopinath. So the devotees understand that Tota Gopinath is a deity in which Gadadhar Pandit and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are personally present and bestowing their transcendental mercy. But Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami describes how Gadadhar Pandit, although so humble, he had many great disciples, such as Bhugarbha Goswami, who was one of the first of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas to go to Vrindavan. Anantacharya, the spiritual master of Haridas Pandit, who was one of the main devotees to inspire Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami to write Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Just close to this place is a holy spot that is especially sacred to our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. Chatak Parvat. This pastime is described in beautiful detail by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Shall I speak something? Lord Chaitanya one day was on his way to the sea to take his bath. Suddenly he saw a large sand dune named Chatak Parvat. In his ecstasies of love of God, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mistook the sand dune to be Govardhan Hill. He ran to the sand dune as fast as the wind, reciting that beautiful sloka from Srimad Bhagavatam, that of all devotees of Krishna, Govardhan Hill is the best, because Govardhan Hill is giving the greatest pleasure to Krishna Balaram and all of their associates, the cows and the gopas, by providing clear waters that taste like nectar, soft fresh grasses, cool bejeweled caves, and rocks that are warm in the winter and cool in the summer. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, immersed in seeing Govardhan Hill, ran like the wind. The devotees, when they saw him running in this way, they didn't know what to do. Govinda called out, and all the other devotees who were present ran after the Lord. There was Swarup Damodar Goswami, Jagadananda Pandit, Shankar Pandit, Ramai, Nandai, Paramananda Puri, Brahmananda Bharati. They were very elderly. Even they were running to try to catch the Lord. And then there was Bhagavan Acharya, who was an invalid. He was somehow or other just limping along, trying to catch up to the Lord. But nobody could catch the Lord. He was running so fast. There was a great uproar amongst the devotees to try to catch him because they didn't know, in this mood, they had never seen him. They didn't know what he was going to do. Suddenly, the Lord became stunned in ecstasy, like a pillar, motionless. Torrents of tears poured from his eyes like the Ganges in the Jamuna, soaking his body. His body erupted with large bumps. His hair stood up like the fibers of a kadamba flower. He was perspiring profusely with a mixture of perspiration and blood from every pore of his body. His entire body was shaking like the waves of the sea. His complexion became pale white like a conch shell. And from his voice, there was choking sound of cha-cha-ka-ka, cha-cha-ka-ka. All the 8 symptoms of transcendental ecstasy manifested in the Lord's body. And suddenly, he fell to the ground unconscious. The devotees caught up with him. Govinda started to fan him. His body, which was in this state of very, very extraordinary devotional symptoms, was covered with sand. They washed his body with the water from the sea. They gathered around him, loudly chanting the holy names. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed no symptoms of life. He did not respond. The devotees gathered in a circle around him, and with all the power of their voices, they loudly screamed in his ears the holy names of Krishna. Suddenly Lord Chaitanya opened his eyes and said, Haribo. And he didn't see the devotees. He was looking around in all directions, looking for something, not knowing where he was, looking lost. Then he saw Swarup Damodar Goswami. He asked, who has brought me here from Govardhan Hill? Today, I went to Govardhan Hill to see if I could see Krishna herding his cows there. And I did. There was Gopal. He was climbing Govardhan Hill, playing on his flute, surrounded on all sides by cows grazing in the fresh grasses. Hearing the sound of the flute, Srimati Radharani and her gopis, they came and met Krishna on Govardhan Hill. Radha and Krishna together entered into a cave. And the gopis gave me a service. The gopis asked me to pick flowers to make garlands for Radha and Krishna. And as I was enjoying the pastimes of Radha and Krishna at Govardhan Hill, I suddenly heard this tumultuous sound. Why have you brought me here? Why have you taken me out of Vrindavan? You have caused unbearable pain to my heart. I was just about to see the pastimes of the Lord when you have taken me away from there. Speaking these words, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu collapsed to the ground, crying incessantly. All the devotees, seeing the Lord's condition, could only weep with him. Just then, Paramananda Puri and Brahmananda Bharati arrived. And being the Lord's Guru's godbrothers, Lord Chaitanya came out from his partially external consciousness to his full external consciousness to offer respects to these great souls. Paramananda Puri and Brahmananda Bharati embraced him. Lord Chaitanya asked them, why have you come all this way, so far, on the seashore? And Paramananda Puri smiled and replied, we have come just to see you dancing. Lord Chaitanya felt very much ashamed. They all went together to bathe in the sea, returned to the Gambhira where Lord Chaitanya arranged Jagannath's Mahaprasad to be distributed to all the assembled devotees. Raghunath Das Goswami offers a beautiful prayer, meditating on this beautiful sight of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, manifesting the highest symptoms of divine love as he was running to Govardhan Hill, which manifested in truth in Jagannath Puri as Chatak Parvat. In honor of this most glorious narration, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur established a Gaudiya Mat at Chatak Parvat. In fact, he was living here in Jagannath Puri at this Purushottam Mat, Chatak Parvat Mat, and it was here that he lectured on the life and teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And it was here at Chatak Parvat that he went into the ecstatic state of separation, which was the beginning of the Leela of his leaving this material world. From Chatak Parvat, they brought Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur on train to Calcutta, because it was there that he desired to depart from the world. And at the Bagh Bazar Gaudiya Math, he gave up his life to return to the eternal pastimes of Goloka Vrindavan. So for Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's descendants, this Chatak Parvat is a very, very sacred and holy place. We will be visiting there in just a few moments. Just beside Tota Gopinath Temple is the Yameshwara Tota, the garden of Lord Shiva, who was worshipped by Yamaraj. If you remember the first day of the yatra, for those of you who were awake for the class we tried to give, Markandeya Rishi came and he worshipped Lord Shiva. That is just a few minutes away, at Markandeya Srovar, where Markandeshwara Mahadev is. And Yamaraj, seeing Markandeya Rishi worship, hearing about that, he also worshipped Lord Shiva here in the Yameshwar Tota. So at this time, before going in our procession to these holy places, let us offer this prayer. Prayer that by the grace of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, He may grant upon us implicit faith in the words of our spiritual master, our founder Acharya, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Faith in his words and complete dedication to assisting in whatever way we are able to do so in his glorious mission of distributing the knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam to the world. And let us pray here at the lotus feet of Sri Gadadhar Pandit, that following in his most holy footprints, we can relinquish all distractions from the path of pure devotional service. Gadadhar Pandit was the embodiment of detachment, and the essence of detachment is humility. Humility in its true form is no false pride, no separate interest than the pleasure of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada explains that such humility alone can attract the Lord. Let us pray for that humility. And let us beg for even a drop of that love that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to bring to this world. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's heart is an ocean, unlimited, fathomless ocean of love. And one drop of that ocean from his heart can totally drown the entire universal creation. And it is that love that our beloved Acharyas and Srila Prabhupada came to give us. Yes, today let us beg that we can strive in our lives to be fit to receive just one particle of that drop of prema, so that we can be instruments of that love within our lives. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Gauranga Mahaprabhu ki jai. Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai ki jai. Shri Gadadhar Pandit ki jai.
So this Lord Shiva, Yameshwara, Lord Shiva also does what other manifestations of Lord Shiva do. He stays here, and he can allow us entrance into the spiritual dimension of Jagannath Puri. This the Shiva temple, as you see, is built. Is very ancient. It used to the whole area, as I heard, was always had this level, but later, due to the influence of time, sand came and earth came, so that we have now nowadays the level on which the houses are built. You might have even seen that Tota Gopinath, the temple, is a little bit down, whereas the settlements of the people which are more recent is a little bit more up. So this was excavated and found. It's a very ancient temple, and Lord Shiva in this form is called Yameshwara, the controller of the powerful controller of death, the controller of yes, death itself. That is Lord Shiva. But more important for us devotees is his function as the threshold keeper, the one who can get us through. Like some of us felt that Ram Kumar Panda, that Panda of mighty belly dimensions and a very good heart, he got us on the Jagannath cart, and he made arrangements to get us into the inner ring of the Ratha Yatra and so on. So Lord Shiva can also be seen like this. Sometimes we have heard it's not good to worship Lord Shiva or the demigods. And we have seen Lord Shiva as a demigod. Yes, as a demigod who is maybe a competitor of Vishnu. He is not to be worshipped. But the Vaishnavas do not see Lord Shiva as a demigod. They see him as he is glorified at the ending stanzas of the verses of the Bhagavatam as Vaishnavanam Jata Shambhu, really the greatest of all devotees. So don't feel any intimidation or any reservation or shyness to approach Lord Shiva in this mood as the greatest of all Vaishnavas. As we proceed, as we stand here so suitably, we can sing one song. Shiva, 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 Shambhu. Shiva, 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 Shambhu. Now sing. Shiva, 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 Shambhu. 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 Mahadeva 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 Shambhu. Shambhu. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, It is a temple which was established by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. They are beautiful deities of Radha and Krishna, but I forgot their names. Someone knows? We will see inside. We will have our darshan, and then behind the temple, that's important that you note, behind the temple we will then go on a sacred procession around the house in which Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur stayed. This house is built on the top of the sand dune about which His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj was just talking. The sand dune where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw the divine pastimes of Radha and Krishna. It was called Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare